welcome back to the Because Marriages Work podcast. It's so good to have you back with us.
Right.
Let's call today's conversation Now That You're Engaged. I feel that oftentimes that gap between engagement to marriage,
Yeah.
it goes unaddressed because there are certain realities that people face in that specific season that is peculiar to that season that they're in, where they're planning their wedding.
Yeah.
They're trying to make certain decisions regarding the life that they're trying to build together. And oftentimes we focus on either you're already married or you're pre-wedding, but
Yeah.
in the context of the pre-wedding counseling, but we do not speak to the intricacies of that period in itself as well. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's what we're hoping to just address in this video.
Yeah. I think why this was important to do, especially for those who, have listened again and again, and it's primarily marital issues that we speak to. Um, we know we have quite a number of people that are single looking to get married, and people that are engaged as well, working toward being married, listening to us, right? And we felt like for what it was worth, it makes sense to
Yeah.
do this and kind of offer guidance around this period when they are preparing to get married. Because
Yeah.
of course, we know from our own experience that we had a world of issues at the time, and
But funny thing is that we didn't have issues with ourselves
that's
dating.
I was coming there.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a world of issues, but that only started when we started planning the wedding, right? We were fine for 2 years before we started planning the wedding, and then it felt like the moment we started planning the wedding, all heaven broke loose.
Oh, I like the twist. All heaven broke loose. I feel like, and I think it's important that we speak to this because the perspective that you approach the issues that you might
Yeah.
encounter in that season from is so important. And I think it would all vary from person to person. Some people have a smooth sailing, and we try what we try to do on this podcast is we're not trying to say that you must confine to the mold. This is
Yeah.
not a mold. If you
Yeah.
have a smooth sailing, we're very happy for you and we're excited for you. But we also know that there's a proportion of people that would have challenges and they will face real challenges in this season or in this period that they
Yeah.
find themselves,
Yeah.
especially because of their family dynamics.
Right.
Because before it was just the two of you.
But
Now,
now the family come into the picture as
Exactly.
well. Everybody now has a say. Everybody now has something they're trying to bring to the table. And I think that's where ours started from.
Yeah.
The moment parents came in, it was now more than what we both said, right? And it then became what parents were also saying.
Yeah.
And I think the first set of issues were when we're trying to decide on
The
dates,
dates, yeah.
right? And just the fact that my parents were always very busy, and it felt like your mom had agitations around their busyness and the fact that it seemed like it was being elusive to deciding a date for the marriage to happen or introduction and all those other things, the proceedings to happen, and the real friction started there
Yeah.
when we were then confronted with the temptation to defend our parents, on both sides.
Yeah.
And I think what that taught us was the need to keep a united front,
I think
which was the first thing we learned about ourselves. Like, okay, we're actually in this together.
Yeah.
It is us against the world. And I think that happened after one day when we had a major friction. You had cried, I had flipped, and then we came back together realizing, look, we can lose ourselves in this process if we don't pay attention to what's really going on.
Yeah.
We're not the ones that have issues. We are fine.
Outside
of the parents, outside of all this friction going on
Yeah.
with parents, we are fine. So what's going on? Can we actually act our own script and let them be acting theirs, and we keep a united front and let it be that whatever we say is what we say, and then we can debate what they say, until we get to conclusions.
I think that's so important because what happens is that when the parents and the families come into the mix, there's varying opinions, varying personalities. Like we encountered varying personalities.
was a big one.
It was a big one for us. And there comes to a point where it then feels like, because maybe you're still living, for example, I was still living at home with my mom and you were still living at home with your parents. And then when you then hear the issues firsthand from the parents, there's a temptation, right, to want to side with your parents. And then that one needs to realize that it is important to overcome that temptation to side with either of your families against the person that you are getting married to.
Yeah.
Maintaining that united front, we cannot overemphasize it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that leads to even being able to speak or have conversations or had conversations around family, for example, like how does that impact the dynamics of family? I mean, people from closely knit families, for example, might have a way of life
that
they understand, and that might be very different to the spouse of a person, and not being able to converse about what is permissible and what shouldn't be allowed, might set the both of you up for friction, at some point, right? And so just being able to confront those issues beforehand, right? Really. Beforehand. I think it will cut across several things.
Money.
Money, you have to deal with that. What's the word? Family, you have to deal with that, and the money one is a big one.
It is.
Right? It's a big one because when it comes to even preparing the things for the wedding.
Yeah.
There are all those demands here and there that might not line up with
your priorities
that you both have set, and you might have been conflicted with what to expend. I think that being able to confront that and deal with it together and say, look, this is what we intend to expend.
This is what we can afford.
This is what we can afford. And both of you agreeing to that. Such that in the face of anybody else expecting anything different, you both have a united front in that area.
Yeah.
Right? And you're able to, because you've dealt with that, you've conversed about it, you've come to an agreement, and then you're keeping that united front we initially talked about, around that.
Yeah, I feel like it's so important because this period where you find yourself in a season that gives you that unique opportunity to be able to start to practice for what will obtain when you get married. Like it gives you that opportunity to start to see the things that you will need to do, right? Having difficult conversations that may not necessarily be comfortable. Do you understand? Like we've spoken extensively on boundaries in a previous podcast. So anybody that needs to just understand how boundary setting applies can refer to that podcast episode. But then it is so important because maintaining that united front is important, but in being able to maintain that unity rests on your ability sometimes to have hard and difficult conversations. I feel like another thing that really helped us in that season was praying together. We had a dedicated day a week that we had prayers and fasting. Ours was even very important because it felt like we were confronting the realities that we were being faced.
We were walking against the tide. It felt like what we were creating didn't exist. Right? And it just felt like it was an anomaly. Like if we didn't walk at it with the wisdom and counsel or guidance of God, and even with the backing of God, we are probably going to be doing our own strength, and it was not going to be adequate to do it in our own strength. It felt like the only way that we could have forged through and successfully achieved what we desired was that we had God on our side. And I think that even the idea that we weren't doing it for short term, it was together forever for us, and it just felt right to put God first.
Threefold cord is not easily broken.
It's not easily broken. It was the wiser thing to do.
But then as we were praying and fasting, we also made it a point of duty to pray together. Right. Because one can get so overwhelmed in this whole planning thing. You can get inundated by it. And because it is like you're planning a wedding vis-a-vis your normal everyday life. So work things stop for me, work things stop for you. We were still doing all the things that we needed to do. So it becomes so easy that you might actually forget that you are not seeing each other.
You're strained. Because you're focusing on both your work and you're focusing on the work of planning a wedding. Right? And so when you forget that you're actually first friends, and the only reason you're planning a wedding is because you're friends. And you're only hoping to move that friendship from where it is to where it should be, together forever. And so if you forget that and you start to act like all that is important is the wedding, oh my, you lose yourselves.
I remember
right?
that they knew us. They knew us in Ozone.
Yeah, because I mean, we would take every time we found to relax, every time we found to go out, every time we found, that's the period when mom started to have a fit around what time we're returning home, and yeah, I mean, it's all gone now, 8 years past, but yeah,
We don't have any
play
playing
together,
together. Yeah.
crucial. Don't lose your friendship because of the either the demands or the friction and all of what occurs when you're preparing for the wedding. Keep your friendship intact. You need it till the end. You need it to the end. And I think that another one that can easily make some people or get some people set behind is growing together. I mean, you can play together, but you know that there's this popularity that 20 friends cannot play for 20 years. The only reason 20 friends will not play for 20 years is if those 20 friends were not growing together.
Why?
Now, if you grow together, you stay together. Why? Because it increases the chance that you see things eye to eye consistently. And so for us, it was crucial to grow together. No one was going to leave the other person behind.
Yeah.
We're going to, if there was something in our spiritual life that we needed to deal with, we set a course for it. There's something in our financial life we needed to deal with, we set a course for it. And we just knew the things that we needed to pull ourselves together around.
Yeah.
The growing together was crucial because that's the only way your conversations can keep going in a progressive manner.
Yeah.
That's the only way somebody can still feel like I can resonate with you when we're having a conversation. You're no more speaking like a blast from the past. I mean, you're not speaking like a blast from the past. Like we are moving ahead as we're speaking.
And when you say growing together, I remember at that time, I remember reading Samuel Martin's Praying, Power of a Praying Wife. You were reading Power of a Praying Husband, and like we were doing all of those things. Like maybe we'll find a book that is his and hers. I will read the hers, you will read the his version.
Remember For Men Only and For Women Only. Shanti something, I forget their name now.
Yeah. But those books, not necessarily that we endorse all of the things in
I like
reality.
For Him Only and For Her Only because I read it too.
Anyway, so growing together, and I feel like growing together just fits right into something that in this season can be easily missed.
Yeah.
And which is investing in good premarital counseling.
Right.
I feel like I feel like that one can do premarital counseling from the end of just walking through the motions, or is a tick box exercise. Yeah. It's something that is expected of us in this season. It's something that we need to do. It's something that our church prescribes. Not necessarily because you see the need for it.
It is crucial. I feel like it's possible to think that because we are friends, because we know each other, because I mean we didn't need any counseling from anybody to get us here, and so we can figure it out.
You can wing it.
You actually cannot figure it out without counseling.
You can't
because
wing it.
I personally, you can't wing it. I personally, I was exposed to a great marriage with my parents. Right, my parents had. I'm not sure if there's a marriage contest anywhere. If theirs won't come first. My parents did it right. I was exposed to books and I read them. And so the normal assumption for me was that I knew what to do. Right? And I feel like that was the are you trying to say a problem?
A
problem. I felt like when it came to that point of counseling, I had a lot of mindset adjustment to do. I realized that I couldn't lean on the knowledge I had from books or even my parents' experience. Those were good tools in my toolbox, but I needed to be able to sit.
They couldn't be all that
face to face with someone else. I could ask questions. Right. And so first adjusting my mindset around the need for counseling was crucial because that was what helped me sit through it. Right. And then sitting through it, I then found that it was actually very important that I did because I couldn't have rested on just the knowledge and the experience or the exposure that I've had.
And then when we're speaking about counseling as well, I feel like it's important to emphasize that finding the right facilitator is important. Someone whose values align with your values.
I think that was the reason I could sit through it.
Yeah. Because our facilitator at that time came highly recommended by your parents, and it was not even linked to the church. This was something that was
a private
so we
practice.
Still did the church counseling, but we then did this other counseling on the side. As in, like, it was 6 months. It was rigorous. We would write notes in class. We would ask questions. It was really, really rigorous counseling. But then I know that thing was beneficial because there were many times when I would make reference to the notes that we made in those sessions, even after we had gotten married. And it also provided us with soft landing, someone that we could also revert back to after we had gotten married if we were confronted with issues or questions that we needed to ask, burning questions. It provided us with that opportunity to be able to go back to him and say, okay, remember that we asked you this thing when we were doing our sessions, but then we find that now in marriage we're dealing with
this
X, Y, and Z. This has changed. How do you advise?
How do you navigate that?
And I feel like it was so important. But one thing I feel like can be a great limitation in counseling, both from personal experience and from people that we have counseled now, because now we're also sitting on the other side of the divide where we've trained to be counselors as well, and is the fact that it's very easy. There's that temptation to put up a facade in counseling,
like you know it,
to come to counseling like you know it all, and not actually allow counseling to do the work that it was designed to do.
You're actually trying to prove a point, because I remember in counseling, there are different times when I would respond to questions like someone that's knowledgeable.
You are knowledgeable.
You know, it makes sense to do that, right? It makes sense to do that. But I also realized that it's in silence that you learn.
What do you mean?
When you speak, you don't learn anything. When you keep quiet and listen, you learn. The only time you get new knowledge is when you are being spoken to. That's when you hear what's being said. That's when you're speaking, you're actually speaking what you know. Many times, right? I mean, there might be those odd cases of speaking something you didn't particularly think about, or even were not conscious you knew, you know, but that's not often the case. When you speak, you primarily speak what you know. When you listen, you hear what you don't know, right? And when you hear what you don't know, you've learned. Now, I feel like many times the reason a lot of people are confronted with the need to put up a front that they know and, you know, try to not feign ignorance or show ignorance or act ignorant is because we societally feel the need to hold the position of intelligence.
Or the position of perfection.
Position of perfection sometimes. And that's because many times we're judged as failures when we show ignorance. So I act like I don't know a thing, or I say I don't know a thing, and someone thinks
less of me.
Someone thinks I'm a failure. Someone thinks I'm no good. Someone thinks. What many do not realize is that ignorance and failure are not mutually exclusive, right? You would fail if you are ignorant. But if you are ignorant, you are not a failure. You did not know. When you learn, right, you have the ability, or you have been equipped to then do better. Right? So I think the goal of learning should be that I'm learning because I need to know enough to not fail. You've only failed when you've learned and then did not do.
It's just like in schools, right?
So if you have not been taught, you should fail.
Yeah, exactly.
So you shouldn't be judged for failing from a point or a place of ignorance. And so if I am unable to say what I don't know, and I consistently, as a matter of fact, if you carry on not knowing because you don't want to show that you're ignorant, you're actually first ignorant, really, and then you are failed. So I think the failing is actually the fact that you know you are ignorant, but you didn't say anything. That's the real failure.
You know, and you know, when we say to people, like maybe someone speaking to you and saying, oh, what's one thing to look out for in somebody that I'm hoping to get married to? And we say teachability. This is actually what we are speaking of.
Right.
That ability,
the fact that you're not too arrogant, or not even arrogant at all to learn.
Yes. That ability to humbly submit yourself to the wisdom of others. Like, it is so important. It's a crucial ingredient for growth. Like, do you understand? Because even the Bible says submit to one another. Like in marriage, you're going to be doing a lot of submitting to one another. So if you cannot submit to the wisdom of people that have even said, oh, we've got professional qualifications, we've trained to do this, we've got years of experience under our belt, and you can't, in that place, you still feel a need to prove that you know.
I mean, we've counseled people that we've watched across from us try to prove that they know what they're doing. And in all the proving, we see all the things they don't know how to do. Both in how they talk, in how they respond to issues, in how they regard their spouse. We see all the things they don't know how to do. But all they try or were trying to do whilst showing those things was trying to show that they know what they're doing.
I feel like you don't even, your counselors they're there for a reason. Like, I'm not sure that anybody...
They're actually there on your side.
Do you understand? I just know that they are there for you. They're there on your side. So really, you don't have a need to prove anything to them.
You don't have a need to prove a point. But, that's why I explained with the idea of societal, response to ignorance and judging that as failure.
Yeah.
And the reason I said that was because I know that many people are confronted with that. So learning becomes tougher. The humility, for learning is tougher because at that point of humility, you're vulnerable. You've set your emotions out. But imagine if it's met with criticism and judgment.
Yeah.
But what happens is that in the face of the compassion and empathy and understanding of a counselor, that shame is eradicated. You are able to thrive. You are able to speak. You are able to grow. You are able to be yourself and then get out from there better.
And I feel like that's another thing in terms of choosing the facilitator. Compassion and empathy must be something that they display. Because in the face of compassion and empathy, shame is eradicated, like you rightly said. And I feel like another important thing is that do not be afraid. Because there will be things that counseling would unearth.
Yeah.
There'll be issues that counseling will bring up. There'll be things about yourself that that will be revealed to you in the process of counseling. And then for some people, the response that they would want to have is to defend themselves or to shut down.
Yeah.
And if you shut down, that process will not do its work.
The growth that should come based on the learning that you've been exposed to would elude you.
I know people that have gone from counseling to saying, oh, they're not getting married again. Because they realize things that they feel like they cannot live with, they can't cope with. Do you understand? And I feel like that is in a regard that is even better than having a failed marriage down the line. Do you understand? But then for the two of you who have gotten to this stage, don't let that be the fear that restricts you from allowing counseling to do the work. Because if you are really humble, if you're a student of learning, then I always say to people, I'm a strong believer in the fact that if people know better, they will do better.
I have something to punch that. But that's psychology now.
But then I believe.
But yes.
If people know better.
Given all things being equal.
All things being equal. Ceteris paribus.
All things being equal. People know better, they'll do better.
Given the right frame of mind.
But I feel like I should just put that in now. So it's not like it's just. But there are times when people know and don't do.
Why don't they do? Maybe because they are not teachable. Maybe because they don't have the humility.
Not necessarily. They don't
want to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they know, but they do something else. Do you understand? Like there are those situations.
They're
probably trying to prove a point.
Those people are
They're probably
outliers.
trying to. Yeah, there may be that. So imagine. Let's use like critical scenario. Maybe a husband.
These are real life.
Maybe a husband.
This is a glimpse to how we argue.
Maybe a husband that knows that he should typically do the dishes when he's done with his meal. And maybe because he's upset, he knows he should do it. He knows what to do to his spouse.
We're not talking to
but he doesn't do it. I'm just saying that
we're talking to
he knows better, but he's not doing better.
People that know better and do better. Those are the people that we're speaking to here. People that have the humility to learn and they want to know better because they want to do better.
And then there's also the case.
Oh my goodness.
Where sometimes you know better, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
But the circumstances that occurred to create the action you finally took, permit you to do what you knew. There's that too.
Okay. I see your point,
right.
Actually.
But I get your point.
Yes, my point is...
And it's a valid point.
Your point is
you
valid
should, by all means, do better if you know.
Yeah, industry.
Right.
That is the expectation of
Yeah,
a
you
sane,
should do better if you know.
well-functioning person.
That's the
That if
idea
you know
of
better,
knowledge, that you do
you
what
should
you
do
know.
better.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. But then I feel like what I was saying is the fact that when you unearth parts of yourself that you find unpleasant, do not default to defense. Do not default to running away.
Yeah.
Confront the issues and get better. Confront the issues and growth rates. That is when you will know that counseling has actually had the work, has done the thing. Do you understand?
Because you can humble yourself and learn. Yeah.
And I feel like going into the process, like post the counseling and post getting married as well, it also comes in something that we discovered is the need for periodic assessment.
Yeah. And that's crucial because sometimes you don't even know what's changing or what has changed, and you don't want to be shocked from time to time that something is supposed to have changed but hasn't, or something is lagging behind in a spouse, or a partner. And so it's something that we would prescribe to have periodic assessments. Before the marriage, after the marriage, consistently after the marriage, check where you are. Feel the pulse of your relationship. And we have a tool.
Dr. Ife, feel the pulse.
And we have a tool that helps with that, that people can engage. And so, of course, descriptions will be in the, or links will be in the description if that's something you want to access or something you want to reach out to us for, to be able to access where you are, right? But I think, or we believe that it's something that is beneficial, that you just know where you're standing as regards finances, where you're standing as regards your spirituality, where you're standing as regards your sex life, where you're standing as regards, of course, sex life is when you're married, in our view, but where you're standing as regards the different crucial areas of your life.
Yeah.
Right.
And I feel like for those that thrive in summaries, I'm the one that helps you to summarize. So we've spoken to this in stages, right? We've said that at the beginning of the whole process, when you start this whole wedding planning and you're now newly engaged, it becomes very important to keep a unified front. Recognize what your priorities are and invest in those priorities. Pray together, play together, and then grow together.
Right.
In growing together is when we've then spoken to the fact that investing in good quality premarital counseling and sort of like the mindset to have around counseling is also what we've addressed. Be open to learning,
humble,
be
teachable.
Be teachable.
Yeah.
And in terms of choosing a counselor,
and
someone
then assess what you learn from time to time. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I feel like this has been helpful, and I believe that it has helped you as well. If you know anyone in this season of life, you can share the link to this with them for them to also lean and glean in on this conversation.
Yeah, and if you're even going through a period of preparation for a wedding and you haven't particularly engaged in counseling, you can reach out to us, right? We offer that service of counseling, and we're sure that it's one that is solid enough to touch all the different fronts that it needs to touch for you to be solid enough for your marriage.
Marriages work, and the marriages that work are looked at. We're rooting for you. Bye now.